Yeah, I'll say this, Bill. To me, the interesting thing, at least the thing I'm most interested about Baltimore, and it's why I like the over, is the addition of Calais Campbell on the defensive side.
Yeah.
I thought that was just a terrific pickup. It gives them a wrecker on the defensive line, someone that can get after the quarterback. And even with Earl Thomas getting kicked off the team, which was really weird, I still think the Baltimore defense has the potential to be better this year than last year. And they're not counting on like a crazy turnover count or that sort of thing to make the defense good, like sort of like Pittsburgh. I mean, they're just a really good defense. And so, I kind of lean towards the over here. The other weird thing for me is just how polarizing Lamar Jackson is. The people that hate Lamar Jackson, like, refuse to acknowledge that he has the potential to even be a good quarterback. And it's just sort of bizarre. I mean, even if Lamar Jackson regresses, I think he's going to get better. But even if I think he's going to get better as a quarterback, his stats might not, show that. It's hard to duplicate statistically to duplicate the sort of the season, but you can still improve as a quarterback, even if your stats don't back that up. But I think he's going to improve as a quarterback, and that's going to show up on the field. So, I like the over here.
Yeah, I think Bill Krackomberger. I'll ask you about that. Are you counting on statistical regression to the mean on Jackson?
Myself, I have to just talk about things from a gambling perspective, because that's what I do. I have no allegiance to any one team or any team at all. My allegiance is only my bankroll. So I have to you have to put yourself in the wagering public. Joe Public here, they always think of two teams. This year they'll think of, because of last year, they'll think of Baltimore and Kansas City. So automatically the sports books, with anticipation of the customers coming in betting over the season wins, to win the division, to win the league, to win the Super Bowl. So automatically you have to play contrarian. And yes, 11.5 is correct on that season wins over under. Automatically I'm waiting up until game time a lot to bet the under on a lot of these public kind of teams. Now, I'm actually, strangely enough, I'm not betting the under on Baltimore, but I did bet the under on Kansas City because I got a 12. But going back to this team, they're minus 2-1 just to win the North. And I tell you, I'm one that's not going to lay too much money on things, especially I'm not going to lay 2-1 on a team like Baltimore where it's so dependent on that quarterback. If he goes down or something happens to him, now that 2-1 becomes a plus. So I am not so quick to jump on the bandwagon here on multiple areas. Whereas I know it's not fun. And the things I do, my father told me this all the time. He said, son, you take the fun out of gambling. Well, I'm not here to have fun. I'm here to pay my bills. And I look for things that people don't look for. So I look for to be that contrarily side in my brain always thinks, what's the public on? I want to be on the sports book side. I want to be rooting with the bookmaker and the guys at the sports book. And you can guarantee they'll be rooting for under and rooting against a team like Baltimore all year long.
Yeah, let me follow up with go ahead, Bill. You had something?
Yeah, I was curious, as we were talking about season-long records for Baltimore in particular, I had noticed early on, one of the online sports books had the Ravens as a favorite in all 16 games. They were the only team, including Kansas City, they were the only team that was listed as the favorite in all 16 games. And to me, it seemed like, geez, you just go the other side on this. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, especially more towards game time, too, when the public comes into town, more on the weekends. Now we have more jurisdictions than just here in Nevada. We have, different places like New Jersey, Colorado, Pennsylvania. So it's a week. These are weekend towns. What I mean is weekend traffic comes into Atlantic City. They're driving traffic more than flying. And I'm in New Jersey a lot during the NFL season. So I look to bet against teams just like this throughout the season, more towards game time when the public money has pushed and forced the bookmaker to overmove the line. Now, that being said, I don't really bet a lot of NFL sides. Of all the things I bet, NFL sides I probably bet the least. And I'll tell you why. It's the hardest thing to beat is NFL sides, followed by NBA sides. I look to bet college sports. I'm looking to bet WNBA. I'm looking to steal. I'm not looking to gamble. So WNBA, I mean, these NFL, any given Sunday, anything can happen. So I'm looking to bet some totals, some proposition bets, not a lot of sides. As you see last year, look at Baltimore, Tennessee. That last playoff game, they're supposed to win. They're double-digit favorites, sailing into the Super Bowl. Didn't happen. They lost outright. So there we have it.
Yeah. I mean, Krackman, you said something interesting to me that's really important about betting at the last second. To me, that's actually going to be more important this year than any year in NFL history, because the absolute lack of information we have from the team and the league about COVID and COVID-19 cases and who's going to be playing and who isn't, and the way that can dramatically shape the outcome of a game is unbelievable. And so the bet that looked good on a Friday could look absolutely terrible 5 minutes before kickoff. And the idea of getting these bets in early, I think mobile wagering and waiting to the last second on these games now is more important than it ever has been in the NFL season.
Yeah, you're looking, especially if you're looking to bet dogs. If you're looking to bet dogs, you want to wait for the public money to come in. But absolutely, this year is a very unique year. And, yeah, we're going to see what's going to happen here. You know, I jot down all the lines, the opening lines from the sharper sports books, like the one here in Vegas, Circa, and offshore I'll copy down Pinnacle's line. And their openers come out 7 days before the start of the game. So they'll come out Sunday night before the next week. You have 7 days. I'll always jot those openers down to see where they're going throughout the week. And when their full limits come up, where the sharp guys push them around to a little bit, where the public pushes them around to, it's very good to have indicators and keep track. But this year, like you said, fantastic, man. Very good analysis there. This is the real year to follow up and see what's going on last minute.
Let me follow up with a question about Lamar Jackson, because it seems like as Lamar Jackson goes, probably the fate of the Ravens goes. That may be overstating it just a little bit, but I could embarrass a lot of people, nobody on this panel, but a lot of sports writers and gambling prognosticators, if I were to rewind this tape and show you what everyone was saying about Lamar Jackson beginning of last season. He was ranked like the 30th best quarterback or 28th or 27th on the list. He, in some cases, didn't even make the top 32. There was no respect for his passing game, and they thought he was a flash in the pan, another person that just runs out of the pocket a lot. Now we're seeing, after having a phenomenal season, he's clearly an MVP caliber player, can run and can also pass, and he shows a lot of leadership, and then that's something else, inspiring players around you to play better. So I wonder, are we now, is Lamar Jackson maybe getting too much credit, not enough credit? Because I remember what they were saying about this guy a year ago, and it wasn't kind.
Nolan, I got Lamar Jackson on the last pick of a 16-round fantasy draft last year. And needless to say, I was justly rewarded for picking him up, and I did quite well in the league. But, I mean, he's a terrific quarterback, and he has room to grow, and he's going to get better. He's not going to get worse. The league is moving towards Lamar Jackson. It's not moving away from him. If you take a look at all the quarterbacks in the league right now, you take a look at, Deshaun Watson is another one. You take a look at all the young quarterbacks around there. I mean, Russell Wilson, the league is moving more in that direction, and it's moving away from your classic drop back passers. So the people that are fighting the Lamar Jackson bandwagon and train, they're fighting the larger trend in the NFL. They're not following what's going on in college football. They're not following what's going on in high school football. Lamar Jackson isn't, look, I'm not going to say he's going to be the greatest quarterback of all time, but I will say that he's the future. He is what this league is going to be 5 years, 7 years, 10 years from now. And we're going to look back and just think about how silly the arguments are about this.
All right, gentlemen, a final word. We'll start with Bill Ordine and go around 15 seconds or less. Over or under, if you must make a wager, over or under the 11.5 on the Baltimore Ravens.
Well, I'm going to go with Bill on that. I think 11. I think under, but just a shade under. I like him for 11 wins.
Yeah, I'll go the opposite direction. Look, I wouldn't bet this, but if I had to, I'd go over. I think 12 wins sounds about right.
If I'm forced to at a side here, yes, I would go with the under. I did not bet this one, but I would go with the under for sure.
I would actually go with the under myself, and one of the reasons is common opponents, say the three other teams in this division. The other three teams in this division, which we're going to get to in a second, all had miserable years last year, and they almost couldn't be any worse. The Steelers, basically being a 500 team, that's not normal. The Bengals, a 2-win team last season, they're certainly going to improve from that. And the Browns, of course, were just a complete mess and were forecasted as maybe a playoff team last season. So everything went right for the Ravens last season. I'm not sure they have quite the cakewalk this season. Of course, that's reflected in this total. So let's move on to the next team. We do this alphabetically. It's not by our projection as to who's going to finish first, second, third, and so forth. So the next team is the Cincinnati Bengals, those roaring Bengals at 5.5 is the projected win total. This team was just dreadful last season. 2 wins, a 2-14 season. We'll start with Krackman on this one first. What do you think about the Bengals?
Well, they're going to be a little hyped up because of Burrow, I'm sure. But, boy, I tell you, there's still a lot of room for improvement there. Like you said, they were the worst team in the league last year, finishing 2-14. They're now building around the Heisman Trophy winner, the LSU quarterback Burrow, who they took in the first pick, and there was a big odds thing in Vegas that he would go as the first pick. You can also bet on that, so you can bet on almost anything. So there's probably, you know what, though, I say all that, and there might be a little bit of value because there's such a long shot. I seen 30-1 this morning on them to win the division. I mean, I'm not going to bet it myself, but 30-1 to beat out 3 other teams. It may take Burrow a year though to get used to and acclimated to the NFL. So, do I think they're going to finish with a winning record, or it's going to go over 5.5? Well, I guess we'll talk about that at the end. But anyway, 30-1 does sound a little bit juicy, but for a long shot. But I'm not going to take a shot on that. I'm not going to bet on that. But I think they'll have to have 1 year under their belt here with this new quarterback.
Vin?
Yeah, look, everyone go back to Peyton Manning's first season. I mean, there's no doubt Peyton Manning was going to be a superstar, but he threw a zillion interceptions, and the team didn't have a good year. It's strange because everyone's excited because there are weapons around Joe Burrow, right? Mixon's a terrific running back. And the great thing about Mixon is if you go back to his rookie year, he was averaging around 10 yards of reception, which is good. So it shows you something. And he ran behind a god-awful offensive line last year and was getting, 4.5 yards a carry or something like that. And so, I mean, you've got some weapons there. You got A.J. Green coming back. You got Tyler Boyd. And so you've got those sort of things. So there are some weapons, but the defense took a big hit when Trey Waynes got hurt, tore the pec muscle on the defensive side. And so with Burrow growing into the job and, the defense not where it needs to be and all of those sorts of things, I agree with Krackman that there's value. I mean, there can be value in betting, but I'm not going to be betting Cincinnati this year just because it's, too young, too soon, whatever cliche you want to apply, it sort of all applies to that. Now, look, if the season starts and Joe Burrow's setting the world on fire and all that sort of stuff, you can reevaluate and say, yeah, wait a minute, maybe there's a lot more there than we thought. But, history shows us that it's going to take a quarterback, even with as good as everyone thinks Burrow's going to be, at least a year to grow into the role and be able to win with a team that's constructed the way Cincinnati is.
Bill Ordine?
Yeah, I'm with the consensus here. I'm kind of, as you know, I'm the oldest person in the room, and my sense of what it takes to mature into an NFL quarterback is that it takes a while. Now, all that has been sort of telescoped in recent years, mainly because of the rookie contract pressures on coaching staffs to find out right away whether or not a guy's going to be worth a big contract in the second or third year of the rookie contract. Okay, having said that, quarterbacks are being thrown in there a lot sooner these days than they were a decade ago. But that doesn't mean they're ready. And, Burrow has the disadvantage of a COVID offseason. And one thing you hear about NFL, from rookie players when you cover the league, is how much quote unquote faster the game is. And Joe Burrow is going to be looking at linebackers who run like cornerbacks did in college. So it's going to take a while, and it's unfortunate. He's surrounded by talent, as Vin mentioned. Tyler Boyd and A.J. Green and Mixon. He's surrounded by talent. Whether or not they can get even over 5 games, I think remains to be seen. So I'm not going to go around and ask the over-under. I'll give you mine right away. I think they're under 5.5.
Well, so it looks like there's some agreement there on this. I think this is one of those teams that's probably good to bring up the following topic, and that's the COVID impact on the game. No preseason games, so that's 4 games that the Bengals could have used to essentially, the scrimmages just aren't game conditions, and so he's basically being thrown to the fire in game 1. I'm assuming he's starting. I don't know if that's been announced yet, but that as it may, this team just has never played a kind of a down together, any of these people. And if you look at veteran teams like Roethlisberger under center for the Steelers and Jackson for the Ravens, and even the Browns have some veteran spots, it would seem that they would be, the very fact that they've been here before and they know what an NFL game is like, unlike the Bengals, that really, it seemed, put the Bengals at a really big disadvantage. So that's even another reason to go under on this team. Agreed, Bill? Either Bill?
Yeah, well, I'm on the. I didn't bet it, but if I had to bet it, definitely under on this year.
Yep, I'd go under too.
All right, and Bill Ordine, I think you've already said under. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I'm an under on the Bengals.
All right, so good. We're about halfway through our show. I'm here with Vin and Bill, and we're talking about the NFC North. This is halftime. I take some questions from viewers. They don't have to be necessarily about this division, but we do have a bingo. Don Rick has written in, and he's asking about, he lives in Chicago, and he's talking about betting sports, and there's all these new betting outlets, casinos that are opening, sports gambling being legalized in different states, and this is probably up your alley, Krackman. He's asking about essentially finding good middles. He said, are there going to be some middles for teams, especially like the Bears, where you could get the Bears maybe at +3 here and maybe, +5 in New Jersey or something? Are we going to see some opportunities like that?
Well, due to the internet, there's nothing like when I started out in the early 90s, mid 90s. I built my bankroll. I started out with $1,000, by the way, $1,000. I sent $500 to 2 offshore sports books back in the 90s, and I don't want to come off braggadocio. I don't want to be like I'm bragging, but I've made a lot of money in my life. And it started out with just betting middles, scalping in middles. That was the 90s up until the early 2000s. So that is something that when the internet came about, the internet got so popular and all these line services, and it's hard to – I don't middle games at all, but I would if I could. I don't middle games. I'm happy just to get down enough money on my side I want. But if you're looking at a certain jurisdiction like Chicago, by the way, people don't know this. In Las Vegas, there's 3 markets that are bet the most. The people love betting New York teams. They love betting L.A., the Dodgers, but they love betting Chicago. Chicago's a big outlet here where you might find a couple half points here and there on the underdogs betting against the Bears, or betting even a favorite, you might find a half point less. So that jurisdiction there, I know they're going to have like Hawthorne racetracks having PointsBet there. They got some representation with the FanDuel, I believe, and DraftKings. So they have the William Hills. These places are going to be represented. If they're not, they're going to be there eventually. But you really won't find too many middles, in my opinions, in any jurisdiction. But however, you might find something there in Chicago because it's all going to be home money. It's all going to be Chicago money. So you might find something around that key number of 3 is the number 1 number that games land on is the 3 in football in the NFL. So there, sure, if you could find maybe a 2.5 on the line comes out, it's going to go to 3.5 or something, or even 4. And you may even want to buy off or on the 3. It's the only number in the NFL I recommend doing that on. But that's a good question. It really is, especially for that market. Time will tell. But if I had a wager on it, I would say no, there wouldn't be that many opportunities for middles.
Any disagreement, gentlemen?
No, I don't disagree. I mean, let's remember that sports wagering, even on the internet, is intrastate. So it's not like you don't have the liquidity in terms of the point spreads to do shopping between one state and another. Not unless you are, engaging in shenanigans where you've got a friend in New Jersey laying bets for you. So since it's all intrastate, most folks are going to have a hard time finding middles.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both the Bills. I think the intrastate point is really important. Unless you're betting offshore, I think it's going to be really hard to find, if not impossible, to find those middle opportunities, and it's just tough because, and especially if you take a look at the way a lot of sports books operate now, and and Krackman follows this better than the rest, but so many, they're sharing a lot of the same data feeds, they're sharing a lot of the risk management and that sort of stuff. It's become very corporatized. I mean, the days, who was Johnny Avello? The days of Johnny Avello setting the line at the Wynn all by himself ahead of everyone. And look, Johnny's a friend of mine. I love Johnny. And so, Johnny, if you're out there, hello, I miss you. But those days are over.
All right, he's not going to cut you off on comps there, Vin. Don't worry.
Gone. John's gone. John's at DraftKings now. He evolved.
DraftKings now.
Yeah, he evolved too. You see, just exactly what Vin's saying. So, good point there. Yeah.
One more question. We got to move on to the other two teams, and I think Vin, you've got to move on as well. You'll be leaving us shortly. So when you need to pull the plug, just wave and walk out the door. So the other question is from. Well, I've got a lot of good questions here. I wish we had more time, but Stacy is a Steeler fan, and she's asking about, we're going to get to the Steelers, but she's asking specifically about Ben Roethlisberger, probably his swan song year. You would think this is his last season. She's asking, does that, Phillip Rivers would also fit in this category? Certainly Tom Brady and Drew Brees. We're seeing quarterbacks maybe playing their final season, and she's asking what kind of an impact that has, not just on the quarterback's performance and motivation, but the rest of the team wanting to, rally around the quarterback for one last winning season. The impact, particularly in the Roethlisberger case, Krackman.
Yeah, Ben will probably be hungry here. It's like 10 months he hasn't thrown a football, so he think about that. Your body being abused for 15 years, and now he's had 10 months of no abuse. He probably feels pretty good. He lost some weight. He looks good. This may be a good year for him. I was going to get to it when I talked about the Steelers, but I think the Steelers might be a good play on the over this year, and I think they're going to be real competitive with Ben, and they want to give him another ring. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I've been in enough locker rooms, and Bill, you've been in enough locker rooms to know that certain people command respect and the ability to say, let's go out and let's get this done now. And, we're going to throw everything we have. And I think Roethlisberger fits in that category. I think, there's going to be a sense of urgency. There's a sense of urgency within the organization. Every move they've made has been to win and win now. There's no hedging for the future, in that standpoint. So, yeah, I think that plays a dynamic, but I also think it's going to be a really weird year, guys, because as much as there's a sense of urgency within the locker room and maybe within the community at large, it's not necessarily going to be felt out in the field because you're not going to have thousands of fans and hundreds of thousands of fans in attendance. And man, I've been watching these NBA games, and I've been watching, the U.S. Open in tennis, because who doesn't like to bet tennis every now and then, and that sort of thing. But I've been watching it, and the game, and I've been watching the NHL, and the games just feel so different. And the execution feels different. The preparation feels different. Everything feels a little different. So, everything that we know about sports analysis, and it sounds weird to say this, everything we're talking about now doesn't quite work. And we don't know how it's going to play out once the season starts, and we almost have to adjust on the fly because everything we think we know, we're going to have to adjust once the games start because we're in really unfamiliar territory here.
Yeah, my sense of the Steelers, and correct me if I'm wrong, they went 8. They were 8-8 last year, were they not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was with a quarterback situation that was as disastrous as any. Having said that, this has not been the same team since Le'Veon Bell left and then Antonio Brown leaves. And you look at Ben's record over the last 2 years, and of course he only played a couple of games last year. I think his record is 9-8-1 over the last 2 seasons. Granted, I mean he missed the lion's share of last season. I think they're good for maybe 9 games, mainly because I think Mike Tomlin is pretty good at making something out of nothing, which he certainly did last year. I mean, 8 wins was he just pulled those out of his ear. But they don't have Le'Veon Bell or the Le'Veon Bell that we used to know. There really isn't any receiving replacement, obviously, for Antonio Brown. And I think the magnetic strip on Ben is getting a little thin. You know, he's always been a big, tough guy, but he has taken more than his share of the pound. And we've all seen him complete passes with 2 and 3 guys hanging on him. That's sort of his signature, right? I'm not quite sure he's going to be able to get away with that or be able to do that or even want to do that in this season. So I think it's going to be one of these cases where the spirit may be willing, Ben's spirit meaning, but I'm not so sure the flesh is going to be able to keep up with it, to tell you the truth.
Well, did you notice the segue there as we were talking about the Steelers? I realized, well, let's just jump. Let's put the cart ahead of the horse here. Let's go ahead and talk about the Steelers. So let's continue the discussion, gentlemen, and let's just get right to it. We'll do the Browns here in a second. How much of this line, though, they've got to lose the under? You've got the Steelers have to win 10 games.
Yeah,
and that seems like it's largely based on the reputation of this franchise, which of course is glorious going all the way back to the 70s. Even when they're bad, they're still a 500 team. But, you know, I wondered, is that realistic to expect 9 wins for the Steelers, given everybody else in the division may be slightly better? Ben, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Bill, I agree with you on the Roethlisberger. The spirit might be willing, but the body isn't. I don't know whether Roethlisberger can survive another season, but leave that alone. My biggest concern is the Steelers' defense. I mean, the Steelers lived on turnovers last year, lived. And, I mean, they were phenomenal. And I'm not saying the Steelers don't have a good defense. I think they have. I think they do have a good defense. But to replicate what they did last year, is I think just an unfair ask. And so all right, if the defense comes down a couple notches, then does Ben Roethlisberger make up for it with good quarterback play? And I think the answer to that question is yes, if he lasts the season. And yes, if he's the Ben Roethlisberger that doesn't have to get rid of the ball quickly and can absorb the hits and do that sort of thing, because that's the way he plays quarterback. But I'm not sure Ben can play quarterback that way right now and survive a full season. So I struggle. I struggle, and I know Krackman's going the other way on Pittsburgh, but I sort of struggle with Pittsburgh because the defense worries me with the turnovers and being able to replicate that sort of season. And then the other issue is Ben lasting a full year there, and those are just 2 big question marks for me that make it a really tough bet.
All right, Krackman, you get the final word on the Steelers.
Well, you know, and not that I have bet them because I haven't. I just out of this division. I just thought that Pittsburgh, you know, well, there's a bet out here in Vegas. They're plus 4.25 to win the AFC North. I think that has some value there, more than the over season wins. But again, a lot of it's all dependent on Roethlisberger, and you know, I think he's 38 years old now, and prior to this season, that last season's injuries. I mean, you're talking about a guy that had over 5,000 yards and 34 touchdowns. I mean, you know, career highs. Anyway, I'll just tell you though, my mind always works from a betting standpoint, and I see that the bookmakers have shaded things to the over here. I don't even see any 9s. I looked this morning at every single team in this division at a half a dozen sports books. I saw all 9, like 9.5s here. But there may be some 9s offshore. But I think that it's more skewed to the 9.5. That's the reason why I went and said, I take the 4.25. But over 9 is probably a safe bet too. And like Bill said before, they were 8-8, scrappy team, 8-8 last year without him. And if he's 80% of himself, I expect him and the Steelers to compete for the division.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between a 9 and a 9.5, especially with a team, any team in this division, but especially the Steelers, which is a sack away from losing a quarterback, and then they could be a 6-10 team, or it could be a 12-4 team if everything absolutely breaks right for this team. So very good analysis on the Steelers. Let's close it out with the Cleveland Browns, who were forecasted last season to be Cinderella. A lot of people thought they were going to. I think there were 9. They were 8.5 or 9 was the win total projection on the Browns, and just a dismal failure of a franchise going back for a long, long time. It's really unusual to have a division with 2 teams with just such dismal results over the last decade, but the Browns just never seem to shake the monkey off their back. 8.5 wins. Is there any chance anybody here would take the over on this? Maybe that's how I should phrase it. Let me start with you, Bill Ordine.
0 chance of me taking the over on that. Look, there's a lot of, even among people who want to look past the past, it is hard to look past the Cleveland past. They just tend to be the Cleveland Browns. They also are going to start a rookie at left offensive tackle. Baker Mayfield has enough of his own problems, and now he's going to have one over on the left offensive side of his line. They open up the season, if I'm not mistaken, with the Baltimore Ravens. So, they may be better than last year. I hope for people in Cleveland's sake, they're better. But I don't see them being better than 8.5 wins, really. Maybe they'll get the 8 wins. Maybe they'll get the 9 wins. I think it's a pretty good number. Maybe Baker Mayfield will look better. Or maybe, the problems that he had. He got sacked 40 times last year. He keeps getting sacked like that, and God knows where his head will be, to tell you the truth. So I'll leave it at that. You're
leaning under. Vin?
So this is another victim in my mind of COVID. If you're talking about expectations games and what they should do relative to the talent they have, new coach in Stefanski, they brought in Jack Conklin from Michigan State to be the right tackle there. And if everyone's wondering, am I gonna mention every Michigan State guy in the NFL roster?
He's a Michigan State guy, yeah. You did the podcast for Michigan State sports. Let's get that in there.
So the answer is yes. But so at the right tackle, Bill, as Bill Ordine mentioned, a rookie at left tackle. They tried to upgrade at both positions. New tight end in Austin Hooper, who I think is a very good tight end, can work the middle of the field. So I feel like from a personnel standpoint, this is probably a better team than it was last year. The problem is they haven't played, and they haven't played together, and they've got some issues in figuring it out on the fly, and that's going to cost them. And so I think the number is terrific. I think if I was a sports book, that's where I'd be setting the number. Then you've got a new coach putting in a new system, and I think he's going to put in a system that's going to be run friendly for Nick Chubb, and it's going to help Baker Mayfield a lot. But whether it's going to translate into a lot of wins, I don't know. I like the under better than the over. I wouldn't bet this one because there's so many variables, and this is why I'm going to just keep going back to the idea of trying to get more information in this season is actually really helpful because we just don't know anything right now. But given what we know, I'm leaning the under here.
This was last year's trendy pick was Cleveland. As a matter of fact, this town cleaned up. And when I say this town, Las Vegas bookmakers cleaned up against Cleveland, rooting against Cleveland. Big money. Same thing this year. However, there's one other team this year, they're rooting against Tampa Bay. There's more Tampa Bay money in this town this year. Everyone has picked Tampa Bay. So that's the team they're going to be rooting against, just like last year. And, this team's 4.75 So +4, plus almost 5-1 to win the division. It's just not the trendy pick that it was last year. I think they were 6-10 last year. If they get to 8-8 this year, that'll be a miracle for this team. A minor miracle. I would have to, if I'm anything, I have to go with the under 8.5 wins. Again, I'm not betting a lot of these over-unders too, and not trying to bet a lot of futures because I did bet a couple, but you're tying up your money for 16 to 20 weeks and, maybe even more than that. Well, we don't even know if we're going to complete a whole season.
Well, you got to bet on credit, Bill. Come on, man. You got to find a bookie. I can find you a bookie. Well, nobody's going to take your action. Never mind.
You're right.
I don't know if any bookie is going to take your action, sir. Let's close the show out. Fun show. A lot of good information. 3 outstanding guests. Guys, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Now we're going to press you to give your Super Bowl pick. I know you, especially Krackman. I know you hate this kind of a question, but you got to do it.
Right.
So you be prepared. Who's going to play in the Super Bowl? Who's going to win it? But my funnest part of this exercise, I ask every guest, who's going to be the surprise team in the NFL, assuming we get through the full 16-game season? Who's the team that's going to come out of nowhere and shock everybody? Who wants to go first? I threw a curveball at you.
Oh.
Super Bowl pick and a surprise team.
A Super Bowl.
Wow, nobody's ready for that one, huh?
No, not at all.
Oh my! I thought you guys would be ready for that one.
I would be willing to bet more money that the Super Bowl happens in April or May than the fact that that whatever I say right now is going to be accurate. Absolutely. I guess I'll give it a swing. I suppose. I mean, I think.
If you say the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm pulling the plug on you.
No. But see, I'm not interested. So there's two. I mean, Krackman keeps coming back to what do you want to bet and what do you want to see happen? What do you think is going to see happen? And to me, and you guys know this, I used to handicap horse racing. And so, for example, in the Derby yesterday, if I'd been on the air, I would have said, well, don't bet the favorite. He's 4-5 and he's probably going to lose. And he did lose. And so, I mean, it was just a bad idea betting the favorite. So the idea of betting a Kansas City or a Tampa right now, there's just no value in it whatsoever, even if you think those things actually might happen. And so then you've got to start reaching further down the list. And so sort of where do you go from there? And so in the NFC, I mean, I think Seattle has some value. I don't know what their numbers are right now, but I think Seattle has some value on the board from a bettor standpoint. There's too much public money behind Dallas. But I think Seattle's got some value from a better standpoint on the NFC. And the AFC side, there's not a lot of value on the board because Baltimore's getting a lot of money. A lot of the teams that you would expect to be up there are getting a lot of money. If I'm going to throw out like a wild card to bet on, maybe this qualifies as a surprise team, is maybe the Bills. Is a surprise team. But if you're just looking, and this is just pure value, not who's going to end up in all that sort of stuff. But I'm just looking for value on the board, and I go Seattle and Buffalo for value on the board.
Excellent, Mr. Ordine.
Well, Vin stole my thunder there. Buffalo for sure. I mean, if we're going to stay clear of the chalk, all right. Let's say I'll stay clear of the chalk. Meaning certainly Kansas City and Baltimore and even San Francisco for that matter. I'm going to, for sure, Buffalo as a surprise team and as a Super Bowl candidate. And on the other side, I'll be a homer and say Philadelphia on the NFC side.
Out here in Vegas, I actually bet both of these bets at the Westgate. You guys are on your team too. I bet Buffalo to win the division at 20-1. I also bet Tennessee at 20-1. So there's two long shots there.
Tennessee's good, yeah.
And I also bet Seattle, and I sent it out to my guys just this morning. And I actually took 8-1, but I seen 7-1 around town to win the division. So we're actually got some of the same teams here. It's really amazing. So there's some they're flyers. They're very small bets, but they are on some long shots here. Hopefully we bring one home.
All right, excellent. Well, thanks for sharing all the free wisdom there, Bill. Most people pay money for that. That's excellent.
No problem.
Thanks for throwing us all a bone. Hey, guys, you were terrific guests. Thank you very much. I'm Nolan Dalla with Slapshot. We do this every day at 4 o'clock. This will be up when you watch it later at the sports site, Pointspreads.ca. We're going to come back tomorrow at 4 p.m. We're going to do the AFC East, and then we're going to do the NFC East on Tuesday. And then we got a kickoff. That's hopeful. That's hope in 3 days for the season. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me. Happy Labor Day to everyone, and may all your bets be victories. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.